Hi guys, and welcome to the War Story podcast. Got another great guest for you today. First things first, bit of housekeeping. As always, ask if you enjoy the podcast, if you find something valuable, please support the guest. Check out what they're doing. The guest today has a book out, but I think you should all go and check out. As always, try and say when we've got a guest on us done the book. Today is not the audio version of the book. We're going to hit a few things, and then there's a lot more to get into in the book side of things. Everything will be linked up down in the show notes below. And please do share the podcast. Tell a mate, do a post on social media, leave a review, give the stars on Spotify, wherever you listen to. It's the only way that we can grow the podcast. We don't have budget for advertising. We don't take advertisements on because I know people hate listening to them. But in return, that means we don't have revenue on the podcast, which means if you want the podcast to grow and these stories to reach other people's ears, then we need you to share it. All right. Without further ado, then, we'll welcome in Brad to the podcast. Brad, how are you doing today, mate?
I'm good, yeah. Happy to be here and chat to you.
Well, we got through the technical issues, mate, so let's get straight into your story.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Let's start with where you're from and what drew you towards a career in the army.
So, originally, I'm from Salford in Manchester. Grew up on the, 90% of other soldiers on a council estate. And I grew up sort of around a pub culture. My nan owned the pub. And then my auntie moved into it. We moved into it. So I grew up with sort of like a big community around me. But joining the army was me and 3 other mates at school. As we was leaving school, all had this great idea to sort of go join the army. One of the lads, his dad was ex-228, so clearly that had a big sort of impact on us wanting to join the military. It turns out I was the only one who ended up making it all the way through the selection process and training. One of the lads had an art issue, so he couldn't join. The other lad dropped out basic training, and so it was only sort of me left from that group. Yeah.
Were you all planning on going to the same regiment?
No. So the other 2 lads was infantry. It would have been QLR at the time. It's now Lancs. That's what they went to. But me, engineers, I went to careers office. Clearly, I must have done better in my GCSEs than them. But yeah, they went off to do the infantry sort of stuff. And I was looking for something a little bit different because in the pub, there was a guy, and he was military. I can't remember what he was from, but he was always on at me. He's like, get a trade. Just make sure you get a trade. You've got something when you get out to sort of fall back on. So I was looking around, and there's like the usual options. I was looking at like REME vehicle mechanic. But then you see this advert for the engineers, and you see the demolitions, bridge building, and all that sort of stuff. And at 16 years old, it just looks like proper cool, doesn't it, compared to spannering on a wagon. So that's why I joined the engineers, pretty much, yeah.
Nice. And what year would this have been?
I joined very early 2006, so it was like March the 3rd or something, yeah.
So when you joined then, we'd already had the Iraq invasion had gone on. Iraq had been going on for a few years by then and stuff, and obviously that, Afghanistan has been going on, not like the Herrick's so much if you joined in March, but were you under no illusions that you were joining to go on ops?
Yeah, it was quite clear, obviously, with the current state of what was going on at the time. Obviously, Afghan was sort of starting to build up. You could see that in the news. So I was under no illusion of what potentially we might be going into. Clearly, I was 16. I was naive. Don't understand exactly what was going on with the politics and all that sort of side of stuff. But obviously, that's a massive driving force of joining the army when you're seeing people going on operations. Because when you join, you want to go and do the soldiering. So that was obviously a massive thing for me to look into, obviously, with everything that was going on.
Yeah. Do you think that affects the way that you're getting trained when your instructors know that it's you guys are going to maybe straight out of training to operations sometimes? Do you think that changes the mindset of instructors and also of the recruits at the time?
Yeah, the instructors, I think they know once you leave this establishment, there's a very high chance, like myself, I turned up to my regiment and I went straight off on Herrick 7. I wasn't even there 6 months. When I turned up to regiment, I was still 17. So they have this understanding that you are very likely going to be going somewhere, and they've got to prepare you obviously for that. As a recruit, obviously it's in the back of your mind, and you're looking at these regiments that are deploying, and you know are deploying, and you're trying to get to sort of them regiments so you can go straight out. So yeah, so it was always in the back of your mind, and clearly it had an impact on training. You need to make sure you're obviously up to that physical and mental standard.
Now, within the engineers, there's different roles, right? So how is it decided what kind of role that you go into?
Well, you join the engineers and then you'll pick a trade sort of when you're at the careers office. What I didn't know at the time, because I was 16, young, naive, I just thought, going off to engineers, I'm going to be a combat engineer. I've seen all these cool things. And then when I got to phase 2 training at Jib Barracks, one of the instructors is like, "What trade are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a combat engineer." And he's like, "No, that's not your trade. That's what you are." And he come back to me and he says, "Oh, you're a driver." And I'm like, "Is that any good?" He's like, "Not really. No, it's pretty shit." And he meant it, because within the engineers, you have sort of what we call field days, and then these sort of like the HQ trades who do all sort of the admin side stuff. So that's like your drivers, signalers, like resources and stuff like that. So I was a little bit downhearted, went through training, did all my driver training and that sort of stuff. And then I turned up at Maidstone 3-6, and very quickly I was shipped off out.
So you went out on your first deployment as a driver then. How did you feel to be getting out on tour? I mean, by then you would have seen all the stuff going on in Afghan at the time with 16 air assault over that summer when you're in your first in training and stuff, I suppose. And so there's been a few Afghan tours all over the news and everything. And how's that make you feel?
Yeah. So for us, obviously cameras had become a thing, so we started seeing like clips of footage of lads coming back in contact and stuff. And you have sort of two feelings. You have one, I want to get involved in that sort of stuff. Maybe as engineers, we're not going to be getting as involved as the footage we were seeing. But then on the other hand, you're like, it's proper. It's not like one of these tours, like where you go in and you're just patrolling, doing a bit of peacekeeping, stuff like that. It was actually going on. So it was a real legitimate threat to your life.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the camera there. Was that something you made sure you had in your pocket when you went out there? Because you post some brilliant clips on your social media.
You know what? I can't even take credit for this, because at the time, no, I didn't use a camera. It was one of the other lads in the team who took majority of the footage. He had a helmet cam. And you know what? Ironically, at the time, we all took the piss out of him for it. We was all giving him loads of shit, calling him a virgin. Why'd you got your camera out? But now looking back, it's like clearly one of the best things. And we have an hard drive, and we all just shared footage between each other. And because we bounced around quite a lot as well, we've got footage off other people as well. So I was quite lucky. I've got an hard drive full of thousands of photos and hundreds of videos. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'll make sure that the links down to your social media down here, so anyone can check them out. But I always enjoy seeing them. So tell us about your first tour then, mate. What was your first experiences turning up in Afghan? What were you doing out there? Where did you get around to?
So first tour, initially, like I said, got up to regiment and straight away onto pre-deployment training. I was told I was deploying as a driver. So we'd go there, get to Bastion, and then effectively we'd be doing just little bits of sort of ferrying people about, sort of keeping the cogs turning. But as soon as I landed in theatre, within a few weeks, I was straight out to one of the FOBs PBs. Everyone's on demand. It's like, so they're dragging people in. So I got attached to one of the field sections straight away, building the FOBs and PBs. And we went down to a place called Arnhem first. And I don't know if you know about it. It's built on like a slight hill, and behind it, 50 meters, is a minefield, and in front the green zone. And from the Taliban, could see straight into the camp. And so that for them, it was perfect for firing rockets into camp. So there was Chinese rockets every day, multiple times a day, coming into there. And I was 18 when I deployed, so I didn't really know what to expect. I was obviously looking around to older people to sort of lead us on. I was pretty naive. I just went with the flow. I never sort of felt in any like real danger was there. Most of the contacts and stuff I had was within the PBs, if that makes sense. So not really out on patrols. It was only a couple times out on patrols I got into the contacts because we were doing all of sort of the maintenance. But Eric 7, yeah, for me it was a perfect first tour because it gave me like a little bit of exposure. It didn't overwhelm me. I could learn off people. You could see what was going on, and you sort of understood how operations worked. So yeah, it was perfect, ideal first. So
Can you talk us through what this like work is that you're doing on the PBs? I mean, I'm sure, like myself, I've had engineers along with us working on it, so we've got a bit of an idea. But for a lot of people listening, might not have any idea about what goes into making a PB. So could you kind of talk us through that process?
yeah, a lot of HESCO, a lot of HESCO. You probably dealt with that, you know. Luckily, as engineers, we had plant, so whereas you have probably been doing a lot of HESCO, it's probably been hand shoveling a lot of times, a lot of plant, putting in the infrastructure in place, generators, getting power in, building the toilets, you know. And at the time, it was just the half barrels, if you remember them. You pull them out and burn them at the end of each day. Yeah, just the general sort of infrastructure, Sangha building, maintaining everything. But also on top of that, then we started venturing out and we was doing local infrastructure. We built a road and a bridge, and I remember that was a pretty good task. So yeah, there's sort of loads of all the little bits when you go to one of these patrol fobs. You see, because at the time we didn't have the showers, did we? We didn't have none of these units we had on later tours. It was just solar shower areas, so everything was just makeshift, made with gyms, made with ammo tins, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Did you enjoy that side of things then? Like, you know, kind of having to do a lot of improvisation.
yeah, especially because me as a driver, I was told you're not going to be touching any of this. You're a driver, so you're going to be doing all the boring HQ style stuff. So for me, at 18 straight away, and then gone out and got to do all of this combat engineering, it was good because I got told I wasn't going to get to do any of it.
Right. And what's the attitude like? You know, every cat badge, every regiment has its own kind of culture and ethos and stuff. What's that like? Because I guess there's an engineer one, and then you probably have more specific ones in each engineer regiment within the corps as such. Is that?
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is a clear divide between the like the HQ sort of elements and the field elements. Each regiment is slightly made up different depending on what their job is. But effectively, the fielders are seen as like these heroes, and us, who was the drivers, the signalers and stuff, was what we used to call the remps, you know, usually the guys who are at the back. So when you join the engineers, you really want to be a fielder. There's a massive sort of competition between both of them sides, if that makes sense. So us as drivers are going, yeah, but we can still do your job. And the fielders are like, yeah, but not to the same standard, if that makes sense. But clearly I was straight out and then straight onto tasks as an 18-year-old sapper.
How about the relationships between senior NCOs, junior ranks, that kind of thing? Is it quite relaxed? Quite relaxed call like that, or?
Well, like all of them, it depends who you get, doesn't it? You know, I've had some who are relaxed, some are not. But when I've compared my experiences to other lads, I've had other lads who've transferred from guards to engineers, infantry to guards. It does seem quite a lot more relaxed. than some of the other units. I think at the end, as the engineers, I don't know why we think of ourselves as smarter as everyone, but that's not the truth of it. It's just sort of what we're sort of led to believe in training. So we try and say we treat our lads more like adults, if that makes sense. Whereas I think from what I've seen, sometimes a lot of lads can be micromanaged in other units and regiments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're giving quite a bit of personal responsibility then, giving it. Yeah. Okay. What who was kind of in that fob at the time? Like what is it an infantry regiment out there that you were attached to?
Oh, who was he who was out with on that one? I think it was some guards regiment. I can't remember exactly which one it was. But it was a guards regiment, and they was all pretty chilled with us. We got left alone. We had our own sort of little bit, and then it'd come clearly to our seniors, and then we'd get maybe dragged out to do a couple of jobs on the patrol with them if they needed, obviously, to breach and get in anywhere. They'd take a couple of lads out. I never got to sort of do the breaching with the half bar mine, but plenty of the other lads went out with infantry lads and got to do it. Yeah, but
so they were doing like proper assaults on compounds.
Yeah.
So while you were there on this tour, then are you kind of getting a good idea about what you want to do, get out of the driver trade and get into something else?
Yeah, well, I think so. I didn't get out of the driver trade. I never got out of the driver trade. I was just very lucky how somehow, for me, without ever serving within like a search EOD regiment, I ended up getting to do search 3 times. I ended up getting it to do it on my second tour of Afghan. I went to the Olympics and did all the pre-build up, searching all the venues to the Olympics. And I went to Iraq later on Shader, teaching it to. So I sort of just kept falling into search and never ended up getting out. I did get a retrade eventually, but I signed off just after I got my retrade, so I never ended up doing it. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk. Is there anything else you want to say about the first tour then before we kind of go on to
no, not really. The first tour was pretty, it had its moments, but it wasn't overwhelming. I feel like it just sort of set me up eventually to go on and do the second tour with a lot more insight. But also the good thing is, from our actual search team, there was 6 of us, and 5 of the lads was actually on that tour as well. So like my future team commander, he was a Lance Jack at the time within them sort of FOBs PBs. So when we then deployed later on, we already had like a great understanding of each other.
All right, mate. Well, talk us through how you fell into for that role for your second tour then.
So clearly the ID threat went through the roof. Herrick 7, not really a massive ID threat. It was about, but it wasn't a massive issue. The ID threat went through the roof. So 3-6 Engineer Regiment that I was at, it got told it needed to start providing search teams to back up what 3-3 was providing, because I think there was like 3 or 4 search teams on Herrick 7. And then when we went on to Herrick 12, it was 20 plus, maybe 25 search teams. That's how much the threat had evolved. As a squadron, we had to supply 1 team. So we was very lucky. The team commander got pulled in and effectively got told, take who you want, pick who you want, pick the best team. This is the first thing going out from within the squadron. So clearly we want to set like a good example and show how it's done. As soon as you know there's a tour, everyone's throwing their hands up, aren't they? So I'm like, yeah, I want to go. And I remember it was touch or go whether I was actually going. There's a little bit of discussion because I would have been 20 when I deployed. On my second tour, I was 19 when I was going through the training. So it was like quick turnaround as well for me. So there's quite a bit of discussion, and I had, believe it or not, 2 kids at a time, so I was 20, 2 kids, and they're like, is he going to be all right? We've got a full squadron to choose from. But clearly, Andy, the team commander, he'd served with me on a previous tour, and he's like, no, he's a good lad. So he fought, and he got me on the team. And then we just went and did the search course. Amazing course to go on. You learn
Can you talk
much.
us through? Can you talk us through what happens on that course, mate? How long it is? What like how in depth you get, and who's teaching it?
So it's 6 weeks long. When we went through it, it was pretty much all Northern Ireland based search. It did start in like Palestine, but then it was developed clearly over years in Northern Ireland with the IED threat. So we got all the TTPs and everything down amazing over that time. My next door neighbour on the Pads estate was actually a search instructor. He ended up being our team's instructor, so I had a little bit more of like an insight and chat to him, stuff about it. The course itself, like I say, 6 weeks long. You'll do 4 weeks of just pure searching. The first week is learning all the theory side of it, all the skills and drills, and then towards the end of that first week, you'll go out and you'll do your first task. But when people think of search, they think Afghan specific. They think going down a road, clearing a road, or going into a compound, clearing a compound. But search encompasses quite a lot of other stuff as well. In the UK, clearly we do like building searches for VIPs. That can be like offensive, defensive, so you can work alongside the police. You can go to venues to make sure they're safe before VIPs turn up. You have like area searches, so if you've got a large bit of area, there's a specific drill for that. There's route search, which is majority of what we were sort of doing within the Afghan environment. And the compound search had just come from like the building search. All that had just sort of changed. So none of it was new. We was very lucky as an army, I think, because there was no other countries who sort of had this same capability that we had. They all did little bits of it, but nowhere near as in depth as what we did.
So that's kind of just been all this built up knowledge from all the decades in Ireland, as you mentioned, Palestine as well. The pitting out anyone's not familiar, basically Britain's kind of counterinsurgency there straight after the Second World War. So what we're talking about, like 70 years probably at that point of institutional knowledge. So how did you feel about getting onto, obviously, like this quite a bit difference in your roles for the tours? Were you looking forward to it?
Yeah, naively looking forward to it is what I'll say, because you know the threat. You know exactly. You're walking down a road to look for bombs within the road, so you know there's a big element of risk. And just before we deployed on Herrick 12, Herrick 11, the regiment supplied the first two search teams. It was both from different squadrons of us. So we supplied two search teams, and about 6 weeks before they went, within a week of each other, each one of them search teams suffered a KIA. One of them was a resource search advisor, WO2 Dave Markland, and the other one was a sapper and actual searcher, Sapper Guy Mellors. And that was just before we go. So I think at that point, I was very much like, this is very real now. Because when we went on the search course and we sat there on the opening day on the brief, he says to us, 10% of you will be killed or injured. And at a time, I just thought it's a scare tactic to the course. But clearly, by the end of the tour, them statistics was like scarily true. And now we'd sent two teams away, and both of them had suffered a KIA. And as a regiment, was now sending 6 teams. So, yeah, it was that was the moment where I think before that I was very much like, yeah, I'll be all right. I'll be safe. It is dangerous, but just like when I was on Herrick 7, and then obviously that happened, and it was a real wake up call for us.
So what did you say it was 12 that you went out on, Herrick 12?
Yeah.
So what year? What was that? Was that
2010?
So is that? Oh, so what? Is that winter tour? Is it
summer?
So
yeah, it was summer. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I should know that. I was on 11. Okay. So infantry maths, mate. Sorry. So when you when you go out there, then I mean, you mentioned your kids and stuff. I mean, obviously, it's it'd be a silly question if I said it was difficult going, but now that you know that it's a bit more real and things, did you ever did you leave them a letter or anything like that? What was your personal way of kind of preparing for the worst?
Yeah, you got to mentally prepare, and clearly you do all the admin side of stuff that the army make you do, your wills, your insurance, and all that sort of stuff. But clearly you write letters home, and I'm one of 6 as well, so I've got brothers and sisters, mum and dad, and stuff. So at the time, a missus and 2 kids. So I wrote letters home. I've still got them all in the back of my diary. They're written in the back of my diary, and they're still all there. Now I've not looked at them for years because it's horrendous to look back on them letters now and sort of read them. But yeah, I've still got them there in the back of my diary. But with search as well, everything's mental. It's a whole mental game. So yeah, getting mentally prepared was a big thing, especially sort of leaving the kids.
Can you give us the big picture then about how it works with these search teams in terms of how you're allocated to battle groups? Like, where are you working out of, and like that kind of because I mean, obviously you guys are popping up everywhere, as it would seem to me, right? So how does that work, like as an asset?
So essentially, all the teams at first will get to Bastion at the beginning of the tour. And there'll be certain AOs. Obviously, you've got your Sangin, your Nadialis, Goresh, stuff like that. And a team will sort of get sent to, like, the main fobs at a time. So we went to Shawkat as our very first one, and each team would have like a search team and an IED team with it. And then there'd be a couple on HRF at Bastion to get flown out for immediate taskings, if that makes sense. So if a search team's busy within an AO already on a task, then that team will then get flown out to the next jobs because of the amount of IEDs there was. And then you'd have search teams then held back going on to specific ops that are happening. So obviously you've got like ops going into areas. So we did a stint with a BRF. But initially we went to Shawkat, and that was our area, and we spent a good couple months in Shawkat. But the amount of time you're actually in Shawkat is not obviously massive because you get bounced out to a job at a rural PD somewhere, and then there's no way to get back, so you end up stuck there for the night, or you just constantly getting bounced around all the time.
Yeah, I mean, when you're covering a whole AO, I can't imagine that there's a day go by where there's not an ID find.
Yeah. But then obviously it's up to the top management to decide which IDs we then go out to and deal with. Hence the uplift from Herrick 10, 11 to 12. There was a lot more search teams on Herrick 12. So that managed to sort of lighten the load a little bit.
So you mentioned the IED team. Would that be the bomb disposal officers, the ATOs?
Yeah. So that'll be an ATO is number 2, an infantry escort, and like a ECM operator. But effectively, we're one team. One doesn't go somewhere without the other one because we can't. No one can do their work without the other half, if that makes sense. So the search team, if we get called out to a 10-liner is where an ID has been found by a call sign on the ground. We'll get there. We will make the area safe. So we'll get on site, we'll clear an ICP, and then effectively we'll isolate where that device is. And if the ATO wants us to, we'll search him up to sort of 5 meters, 10 meters up to the device, because there's always a threat of secondary devices. A lot of the times, they just cut through, do a little bit of farmer for a field and come onto the device the easiest way themselves. And then afterwards, we'd sort of search through. So clearly, he can do his job without us. But then on the other foot, if we're going on to a specific search operation, we've been given a 2-kilometer route to clear, then that is a search team led task. So the 8-0 will effectively be sat in the back of a Mastiff or something, chilling. We will search the route. Once an IED is found, then it then becomes his task.
Can you talk us through the types of IED that were being used at that time in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so the threat had changed massively, like the year earlier, when it had transitioned from the high metal saw blade type pressure plates to then the low metal content pressure plates. That was the main IED we was dealing with out there. There was others, but just to go into the pressure plate, effectively it was a circuit. And when you stand on it or a vehicle goes over it, touches together, it completes a circuit which sets off a detonator, which sets off the main charge. But the main thing with the low metal content pressure plates is made with these graphite rods or copper wire. And at the time, we was using the Valen metal detector, and it wasn't detectable with the metal detectors. This is what made the IEDs so hard to locate. The charges were in these yellow palm olive containers, as you've probably seen yourself. So they was plastic, so there's no metal in them. The only sort of bit of metal you had was a 9-volt battery, but 95% of the time the battery wasn't with the device. It was remotely away, like a couple meters down into like a hedgerow, down into like the little streams where they ran at the side of the road. That was the main threat we was dealing with. Earlier on in the tours, when there was metallic, there wasn't as many issues. It was being found majority of the time. Other IEDs we was dealing with command wires. So they'd be lay up in a compound 200 meters away, and as you approach it, clearly they just set it off once the target gets to the location. We did have RC devices, but we had the ECM at the time, which counteracted it. So there wasn't a massive threat from IED RC devices. I think we dealt with one within the second week we was there, RC, and then we didn't have any other RCs.
And can you just explain what RC is for people?
So remote control, effectively it'd be set off via a mobile phone or a walkie-talkie or something like that. The IED will have a receiver on the end, and then someone from a safe distance can either ring it up or radio through, and as soon as that is made, that contact's made, it sets off the device.
What was like some of the most kind of inventive ways that you saw IEDs set up out there? Because like you said about moving the battery away, very clever about developing their methods and things. Did you see anything like really blew your mind about how they set something up?
He was forever changing it, so you never knew exactly how it was going to be lay out. But we had TTPs to defeat the way they'd lay them out. The main ones, and it wasn't necessarily a threat towards the searcher, it was more to the actual IED operators at the ATOs. They put anti-lift devices under a couple of them, so when the device was removed from the ground, then it would explode as well. So they could put something like a little switch underneath also connected to it. So once it's pulled out the ground, then obviously it then explodes. And that is specifically targeting the ATOs, the bomb disposal officers. They was pretty lucky. I mean, we got shown slideshows of loads of IEDs that had been found by other teams. I don't know. Do you remember seeing them sort of wooden ones? We never come across them where it was completely wooden and the charge got crushed by like a wooden spike when you stood on it, but we never come across some of them. But I know there was teams who did come across them, so literally zero metal, but I don't think they worked very well. But closed pegs, like you say, at release ones, put the closed pegs between a closed peg, put a piece of rubber and a pin on the closed peg, so that would complete the circuit. And then from a far distance, it could pull it with a piece of string. I think there's this narrative that the Taliban was stupid, and I actually I was talking about this a couple of days ago because someone had commented on one of my videos saying You was fighting guys in flip-flops, and you had air assets and this and that. And while some of that is true, listen, these guys they've been fighting the Soviets not long before us. This was our 4th time in Afghanistan. People don't realise as a country. That country has constantly been at war. They were very well versed in how to sort of fight. They could lock us down to like a couple of, like, within your fob. They could come out and plant loads of IEDs, and you're locked down within a couple of 100 meters. You can't go anywhere or fight. It was very, very clever. Well, that was my experience of them anyway.
How often would you? Because again, one of the other things they do is quite often these ID sites will be they'll have some kind of like small arms kind of set up for taking on you guys when you turn up, because like you mentioned about the A2 and the anti-lift, they know what the important assets are within the British forces, right? As you mentioned, they're not stupid. So how often would you guys come under small arms contact when you're going out on these jobs to clear the IEDs?
Yeah, so it was a regular occurrence, a good thing for us. Majority of the time when we go out onto these tasks, we'd have a decent cordon in place. Depending on the ground is how good the cordon is. If you're in a rural area, you've got big open fields, you're pretty safe. The infantry, they'd push out into the fields, and you probably might just get a couple pop shots. If you're in a more built-up area, it's a lot harder to put a cordon into place. So, yeah, coming under contact frequently, not as much as like the lads who are out on the patrols every day. And I think it's luck of the draw on what AO you get. If you're in Sangin, where it's built up, it's very hard to put a decent, strong cordon out in somewhere like that. If you're in, when we went out first to Nadi Ali, it's a lot more rural. It was very easy to put a cordon out. So, yeah, it depended on the AO.
And so something I noticed on our tours, right, is that you go out as infantry, your guys at the front with the valance and metal detectors will find something. Then maybe there'll be a few more in that area, and you'll put cordon in. You guys will come out. You guys will do your job. The IDs get cleared by the ID team, and then everyone leaves. And because you can't keep eyes on that area, next time you go back, all the IDs back. Is that something that you came across a lot? And if so, how did you feel that? Because obviously every time you're doing these clearances, you're risking life and limb. So how did you feel about going back to the same areas and clearing it again and again?
Yeah, I think at the time it was just sort of part of the parcel, but like, I think about it now, how you'd have to have constant overwatch on the area. The amount of blokes you'd have to have actually in Afghanistan. If we had to overwatch every single area that we cleared, you can imagine the amount of manpower it'd take. So go out, and this is why necessarily not called out to every single IED find, if that makes sense. So a lot of times you probably find yourselves just mark and avoid. So you call it up, and then it'd be like, yeah, just avoid it. So it would depend on where it is, but you did find yourself going out to similar areas, and IEDs getting replanted. We actually had the opposite of IEDs getting replanted on a task we did. We did a 2-kilometer route search, and I think this was our second task. So we went at literally, when we got to Shortcut, within an hour we was out on task, and then the next day we was on a 2-kilometer route search as like a brand new search team in theatre. And on the first day we found 2 IEDs, and then the next day we went back to where it had been marked and sort of overwatched up to. We started searching up the road, and I think over the next day we found 6 holes where IEDs had been removed. So clearly they'd observed us and had seen we was a search team, and there's a high likeliness of we're going to go through our procedures and we're going to find these devices, and have come out and have taken them assets back, which I found was like pretty amazing, really, if you think about it. They've come in with an area that's all watched, taken these IEDs out of the ground, and, you know, they're now going to be reutilized somewhere else. So we was a bit down about, obviously, unable to take them IEDs off the ground, but that was another side of it as well.
Mm. Do you have any idea how many IEDs your team found during the tour?
We didn't found a lot of IEDs in the actual ground. We dealt with a lot of it was going out to actual tasks, like where IEDs have been found. So then we'd go and then we'd make that area safe. So there wasn't loads. So people think searching Afghanistan is all about just finding IEDs. So we had quite a few IED finds, but then there's like weapons caches, which we found a lot of weapons. We had bomb making factories, a couple of them. So as a team, we wasn't one of these teams some teams found ridiculous amounts of numbers. We was quite lucky and didn't find a shitload of devices, to be honest. Yeah.
Can you talk us through one of the bomb factory jobs and kind of what you saw and how the operation went down?
Yeah, so this was on a BRF op. We was on with the BRF and we'd been dropped into
brigade recce force.
Yeah. So we'd been dropped into this compound for like 11 days. And effectively our task was to hold this compound while a main op goes on, and we'll sort of draw as much attention as possible. So the main op can go on undisturbed as such, if there is anything as such as undisturbed. And then a bit of intelligence come in. We had two sort of bomb making factories. The first one had already been cleared out. We went there and we'd still found little bits, pressure plate, couple of detonators and stuff like that. But there was no fully made pressure plates, was no explosives or anything like that. The second bomb making factory we went to, we patrolled through like the darkness in the morning. We got there for first light, took up a compound before it, and then there was this compound which was like, right, we believe that's a bomb making factory. I was the first person to search up to it, and then I got to it, and straight away all the ground had been burnt. And the way they extract these graphite rods that he was using in IEDs, they burn the batteries, and then they'd extract these graphite rods from them, and you could see battery casings, little bits of graphite rods burning everywhere. Straight away, I was like, there's something here. There's in palm olive yellow containers in the yard, empty, cut up. And it was like little bits of like HME, homemade explosives around them. And at a time, they was using ammonium nitrate and aluminium mix for it. So it's like this silvery powder. But then we searched the compound. There was one locked room, and we didn't find nothing of like major importance at first. We're finding, like I say, little bits of fragments and clear evidence of bomb making. But there was this one door that we'd not been into, which was locked. So then they come up and they put a bit of deck cord around it. We didn't do a big explosion because we didn't know what was in there. And we was quite lucky we didn't do that, to be honest. Blew the door open, and then literally the ATO walked up, and it was pointless us even searching it because there was stacks of stuff in there. There was fertilizer, already mixed explosives, pressure plates, there's bits and mortars, medical kits, paperwork, intelligence, SIM cards. There was all sorts of stuff in there. But luckily it wasn't, it hadn't been laden with IEDs. And I think that the reason that is because we'd just been dropped into this area. No sort of NATO forces had been there before. So it was in a very new area. So they hadn't had a chance to sort of place anything yet. But yeah, there was all sorts in there. And then clearly we denied the factory. We blew it up, and one of the BRF engineers come up and got rid of all these bar mines in with a mix as well, So it was a pretty spectacular explosion. It was so good, in fact, that the UAV that was above found us and sent us a footage afterwards, from the air, But yeah, it was like a mini nuclear explosion almost, yeah.
Have you still got that footage?
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
I mean, what's it feel like as a team to get fined like that? Because I mean, you saved, you find something like that, you've saved lives, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's well, listen, when you when you're in that environment, everything's about bragging, right? Isn't it? So when you see another search team and they go, "Oh, we found this," and we go, "Well, we found a fucking bomb making factory," yeah. So it was a pretty, it's a pretty good feeling to have a find on that sort of scale is very good, and for a fact then because of the amount of stuff in there that ultimately one of them, at least one of them IEDs, would have um, potentially, been involved in an IED strike. We did get quite good at sort of finding them, I think, towards the end, but it's yeah.
Um, you mentioned earlier like how important the mental side is for searching. Can you go into that a bit more and tell us about like what it's like for you personally in your head while you're on one of these searches?
So I think I was very good at this sort of mental game side of it. Me personally, other lads in the team, I don't think was as good. And I think this is why I got picked for the specific role I did within the search team, which was being the lead searcher. Um, I was, but it doesn't come at like zero cost. Effectively, you learn to shut off every single emotion you have, every single emotion. And that's so you can get yourself into this headspace where you are able to operate without constantly thinking about things. Because what I say is the difference between being in a firefight and search. When a firefight happens, you get that surge of adrenaline, and you can live in that adrenaline. You can get the job done when it's finished. You come back down, but clearly you can't work for hours in that mode searching. Uh, so it would take quite a lot of sort of practice for me. Um, you, like I say, I just switched off every single emotion, like the fear, the sadness, the happiness. So you sort of become like this bit of like an empty vessel. But the downside to that is trying to switch that back on when you get home. You come back home to your missus and your kids, and it doesn't just happen. And in fact, it's probably took me till about 2 years ago to fully get back, I think, to sort of where I was from. And that's a long time, really. Think about it. That would have been like 14, 15 years. Yeah. To you don't even understand that you switch off. I think it's something I did subconsciously. But when I looked at the other lads, I don't think they was quite in the same mental state or space as me.
I mean, you mentioned hours there. Like, what are the practicalities? Because as you said, this is a summer tour. You've got your helmet, your body armor on. I imagine you've got what eye pro on, eye protection.
Yeah.
I like. So, what is the physical side of doing the job like?
The physical side, especially on these sort of long, hot, exhausting days. Now, what I won't do is gob off because there's other lads in the team who carried a lot more stuff than me, and was because of my sort of job role. So the lads be carrying ECM, while we're searching, doing these isolations. We wouldn't be carrying it while searching. Obviously, you got your rifle and everything, but it's like you say, it's fucking hot. It was like 40, 50 degrees while I was there at some point. It went over 50 degrees, I remember, at one point, and it was ridiculous. But you're out for hours and it's just beaming down on you and you're sweating. But when I was lead searcher and I was doing the isolation, I would carry my body armor, my med kit, and all your stuff that's sort of on your body armor, a Valent and a pistol 90% of the time. I wouldn't carry a rifle. Everyone else in the isolation after me had a rifle, and I'd only carry a pistol if we had a decent cordon out, because effectively we come under contact. We can't fire anyway. We're within the cordon, so clearly we can't fire outside of that. And they also had the other lads within the team to sort of back me up. Searching with a pistol, why I did I do that? There's a couple of reasons. When you're searching and you're going down to look and confirm things, sometimes, it's like when your rifle swings round and sort of hits the floor. Clearly, that's not something you're wanting to happen. Another one is on the tour before, it might have been Herrick 10. One of the searcher lads had gone into a compound. A dog had come doing a compound search. A dog had ran out. A lad had shot it. It'd gone through the dog, ricocheted it, took a searcher's eye out. So that was another reason we was told for why we'd carry pistols. But essentially, I couldn't get rounds down a lot of times if I wanted to anyway. So it might as well make my life easier. So for me personally, searching, I wasn't carrying loads of kit and equipment, but the other lads within the team was, depending on what their role was.
I mean, we talked about the bomb factory. Is there any other like notable operations that, because I mean, sometimes these things can all blend together, right? But is there any that stick out to you?
Yeah, there's loads of them. On that same op, in fact, that whole op was literally from the day we landed to the day we went the whole 11 days. Contacts every couple hours. That was with the BRF. We did another op with the BRF, then what we went on to, which was supposed to be the tasty op, and I think we only got a couple shots fired at us for the old 2-week op. So these things happen, don't they? You go out on these big jobs where you're expecting the world to open up, and it doesn't. Another compound we went into. So while we was on that first operation with the BRF, we kept getting contacted from a compound 300 meters away. And this was multiple times a day. So they made the decision to go up and assault and clear this compound of a night time. We was left within the main sort of compound where we were staying at a time. They'd gone up, and then it called us forward if they needed us. They'd got to site in the darkness in the middle at night, and then they got what they thought was like a tripwire within the door. So we was out the door an hour after them. We went up to the compound, and literally as we was getting into the compound, about 100 meters away, a cow stepped on an IED, and it
oh my god
blew up. And there's another compound 30 meters away, which was expecting the Taliban to be within this compound. So we was all outside, lined up, preparing to get into this compound in the darkness, and IED's just gone off. Luckily, obviously, not hit any of us. And I was just waiting for the world to sort of open up. We got into that compound, and then it turned out it was just a cobweb. These things happen, but you can never be sort of too safe. But yeah, that was pretty tasty, and that was because this other compound was 30 meters away, and we suspected the Taliban to be in there. We thought, because they've been contacting us, they're gonna maybe have something there waiting for us, maybe like a command wire. So he was expecting us to go in and then blow it up. So we had to do an isolation, and that is effectively where you do like a 360 around on the compound, and this is checking for like your command wires, amongst other things. But because of the vicinity of the other compound, it was clearly a big threat. And the RESA, that is the search advisory we had at the time, he had previously had 2 of his guys shot by a sniper on that tour, both through the leg, with the same round.
RESA, mate, sorry.
Yeah.
The RESA is the RESA?
Royal Engineer Search Advisor.
All right, and what's that role?
So he's basically the guy who advises the search team and gives you the intel on everything. Devises sort of the strategy and plans of how you're going to do your searches. So he was very wary of sending us out because we couldn't really put a cordon in place either because of the ground. So me as the lead searcher, I was preparing to go out, and the actual ATO, who was a major at the time, was like, he pulled me off and he's like, Brad, you're not searching, you're not doing this. This is my idea. I'll go out. And he led the isolation, to be fair to him, So top bloke. We had a job with some of your guys where our ATO won a military cross as well. That was a pretty, let's say, tasty day. So was it Moshtarat, your guys went out
finished battalion.
So this was quite early on in Herrick 12. So I don't know if it was sort of lads who'd done back end of Herrick 11 and into Herrick 12 a little bit. We got called out to an IED strike. It was a Mastiff that did an IED, and we were sat at Shortcut. And this is like quite late at night as well. So we're not in the evening. We're not expecting to be called out now, because ultimately, as search, we don't want to go out in the dark searching, because that puts us straight away on the back foot. But anyway, this call come in, IED strike on a Mastiff, and potentially we think we've got another IED in front. So we got Chinooked into the nearest PB, which was 1.5 kilometers away from the site. Geared up very quickly, because speed was sort of the essence on this, whereas usually within search, speed is your enemy. You want to do everything slow, methodical. So it was 1.5 kilometers away. I started searching up. It was a straight road all the way up. So as soon as you got on the ground, you could see the Mastiff in the distance. There was 2 Mastiffs. And on the left-hand side was a canal. On the right-hand side, there was just compounds going all the way up. And I got pretty much all the way up to where the Mastiff was. And our resource, the search advisor, he said, Brad, we're within the ICP now. So usually we do research it, but time is of the essence.
ICP, right?
Incident control point. So this is an area where we'd run the task from a safe area. So it's been searched, it's safe. And you will set them up yourselves for when these tasks, but because we as searchers, the subject matter experts, our drill is to research it every single time when you get on the site. We're the subject matter experts, so we'll clear it for our own peace of mind. So we got there. Clearly, it's getting late, and darkness will be upon us soon. He said, look, there's loads of lads walking around. Put your Valen away. They've already searched it. Don't worry about it. So put the Valen away, and I started walking. And then my team commander, Andy, says to me, Brad, cross over that road and we'll go down the other side of Mastiffs. And this is quite an important bit of detail. So I crossed over the road, and it's about 25 blokes in this patrol. Everyone followed my footsteps. We got into the main area, and then finding out what's going on. IED strike on the vehicle. Everyone's fine. We've got cordon out in place. We've been taking small arms fire sort of sporadically every 20, 30 minutes from various locations. I think we've got an IED in front, but we're not 100% sure. Happy days, we crack on. So we go to set off on the isolation, which, like I said, effectively is a 360 of the area that we want to make sure is clear. But there's one obstacle which kept cropping up over the tour, and this is compound walls. At this point, we're not wanting to keep blowing through them constantly. It's pissing off the locals. We're destroying the compounds. But now we're climbing over compounds. We're using ladders, and we called it Grand National. So I was the first lead. I was the lead searcher, so I was always first. Get over the first compound wall. The whole team follows me. We go to get over the second compound wall. And I climb up, and the drill is we search the other side of the wall as much as we can, but clearly, a lot of times you can't search the floor because these compound walls, right? You can't lean over and search it no matter how far your balance extended. So we drop the ladders down the other side from sort of behind the wall, if that makes sense. But while I'm there and I'm up there doing it, I'm sat on top of this wall about to get ready to drop the ladders down, and I got shot at. And there's a difference between getting shot at when it's close and when it's fucking really close. Like there's a difference, and you hear that sort of whiz instead of like that distant crack almost. I was on this like 10-12 foot wall, and I just fell off this wall, and I landed on the bottom, and I was like slightly winded. One of the lads is like, "You all right?" Obviously thinking the worst had happened. Like, yeah, no, I'm all good. So we just sit behind this wall, and we're just chilling, relaxing, while the cordon and the A&A was there, and the lads in the Mastiff were sort of dealing with the contact. There's nothing we can do. We're inside a compound. 5 minutes later, it comes over the radio, and it's like, right, it's sorted now. Let's crack on with the isolation. Let's get this done. Obviously, I was a little bit more wary this time. So as soon as I climbed up the ladders and I popped my head up, it just opened up again. So I just got back down, and we all got behind this wall, and we're all just laughing. You know that nervous laugh you do when something sort of happens. So you're all just laughing to yourself, and you're like, can't believe this. This is shit. 5 minutes later, it comes over the radio again, and they're like, right, it's time to go. You need to get over the wall. We need to get this isolation cracked. It's getting late. And the team commander turns around to me and he goes, Brad, come on then. And I'm like, fuck off, I'm not going. He's like, you're the lead searcher. You need to go. He was right, ultimately. And he had to make like a risk assessment at that time. Am I going to fully search the other side of this wall, or am I going to get over it pretty quick? Because clearly it was accurate small arms fire coming our way. I had a quick peer over. It didn't seem to me that it was a good place to put an IED. There was no obvious ground sign, so I just got over the wall, and then there was another wall straight away. So then I was able to search the area. Luckily for me, there was nothing there. But these are sort of people don't understand the decisions you've got to make at that time on the ground. You know, we got round the rest of the isolation. Absolutely sound. Not a single gunshot fired our way. Got into the area, but clearly we'd seen disturbed area from in front of the Mastiff, and it turned out there was another 3 IEDs in front of this Mastiff that had been blown up. And the ATO went up. He dealt with the first one and the second one. Absolute zero issues, no issues. And then it come to the third one. And what we do to extract them from the ground, like I was talking about before with the anti-pull, you attach like a hook and a line to it so you can pull it out from a safe distance. And he was only a small guy, our ATO, Woody, and he couldn't pull it out of the ground. So he got the help of me and another lad, Flash, and he says, right, I need you to help me pull this out. I can't get it out of the ground. What he didn't realise, he'd wrapped the rope round his hand. So then, obviously, we're on the other end of the rope. He said, 1, 2, 3, pull. We just heard a scream, and at the time, we thought he broke his hand. But we've still got a device in front, and now we've got an EOD operator with one hand. At this point, there's a couple more sort of contacts like popping off, but there wasn't these big contacts. It was just sort of, you know, a couple round bursts and stuff. He went up, but rather than exploit the device where we try and extract forensics, he's like, I've got one hand, we're just going to blow it up. We've got 2 devices already for forensics. So he blew it up with one hand. And now, like, the sun was setting, it was getting dark. I'd been searching all day, and the team commander comes to me and he's like, right, Brad, you're not searching on the way back in. This is a task. We're folding the task in now. We're going to head back. So I packed my Valen away. The next searcher, he got his Valen out, and he's like, because it's dark, we're going to set off like from well within the ICP. And the searcher, he took about 3-4 steps, and he's like, I think I've got something here. We're like, you've not got nothing. There's people been walking around the ICP. You know, there's no chance you've got something. But we never sort of discourage anyone from confirming on something that they're not happy with. Ultimately, it's their decision. They've got to be 100% happy to step on that ground. And he went down and he uncovered a pressure plate IED. Now, I don't know if no one had just managed to stand on it or if it just didn't work. I don't know. But earlier on, when we'd come up the road and we got to the ICP, and the team commander said, right, Brad, go down the other side of the road and cross over where the Mastiffs are instead. And every single person followed my footsteps. I must have been, 2-3 steps away from where it was, if that. So I didn't go over it. And because I wasn't actively searching for IEDs as well, I've been told, pack your Valen away. You know, the ICP's clear, we're not going to research it. I wouldn't have even been looking for an IED in that scenario either. So yeah, it was that was one of them tasks where we was very lucky, you know, to get through it as a full team, and not a single person was sort of injured. And ultimately, the ATO, he won a military cross off the back of it, dealing with devices with one hand, both of them devices. There was a total of 4 or 5 devices, I think, I can't remember, around this sort of Mastiff. And obviously we'd flow in, and then we'd extracted them out back to the PB. And I remember the OC at the time, he'd come over and he'd give us a bag of Kit Kats at the end as a treat for getting them out, pulling them out the shit. But yeah, that it just shows like you don't get away with making mistakes very often, and we were very lucky to get away with that one of not researching the ICP.
See, you mentioned, right, obviously a lot of the search work you does involves infantry cordons and things like that. Did you ever like fire your weapon in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so not my personal weapon. I never actually got rounds off on my SA-80 or my pistol, but on a sentry position, I definitely did. So this was another one when we was working alongside the BRF, and it was on that actual same op. And like I say, we got dropped into this compound, and from day 1 to day 11, it was just constant sort of contacts throughout the day. We was getting given these 30-minute stags. And as searchers, we'd go up and we'd do our 30-minute stags. And I remember the first lad, he went up and he got into a contact, and he didn't get many rounds down off the Jimpy. I think he got like 5-10 rounds, just a burst, and he scarpered away. You know, so he come round clearly gobbing off. He's like, I've got rounds down, and you lot have. And then the next day, one of the other lads went up and he got into a contact, and he was a little bit more sustained. He got like 50 rounds down, and he's going, yeah, there's a bit of banter then between them two. He's like, I've got more rounds down than you, and this and that. So later on that same day, I got sent up onto the sentry position. And we was only doing it, like I said, these 30-minute stags. And I remember the BRF sniper had come up just to sort of have a look, because it was that time of day where we're getting ready and it's potentially something going to be happening. And I was 25 minutes into my 30-minute shift, and we got contacted. And it was from a compound which was about 300 meters to the north, and they dug out a murder hole in this compound. For those who don't know what a murder hole is, it's effectively a small hole. They can just stick the rifle muzzle through. They can get rounds down towards you, and they're pretty safe with obviously taking rounds coming in, because you've got to be pretty accurate to get a round through a murder hole. Very quickly, he identified the firing point, and I was on the GPMG. So I started just putting bursts of rounds onto this area to suppress it. But very quickly, I realized there was a wooden gate to the left, and like something just caught my eye, and I just seen someone scarper across it, and that must have been where he was extracting throughout, and there was a couple fighters within there. And at this point, we had this makeshift like sentry position. It must have been 4 sandbags high, so it wasn't big. Lowered down, you had a tree either side, and you could see the twigs snapping on these trees, and that's from sort of incoming, outgoing rounds. So it's pretty accurate. And I was keeping an eye on this wooden gate where he's going, and then a Taliban fighter come, and he just took up a knee at this gate, and he started firing towards our position. And I just fired a burst of rounds in that sort of general direction, and he was just getting off to go, and he hit the floor like instantly. If you take rounds off a GPMG, you know you're not sort of surviving them if you're taking a couple rounds off a GPMG. And the sniper lad, he shouted something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm paraphrasing. It was like, you just fucking smashed him. And he just carried on, another burst. And then after that, the contact just stopped immediately as soon as sort of he'd hit the floor. It was just gone. It just went from pure chaos to quiet within seconds. And when something like that happens, you don't even think about what you're doing. Everything just happens instinctually, if that makes sense. So, like the getting rounds down. They had to change the belt. I don't even remember doing any of it. I just remember sort of cocking the weapon and everything just happening on autopilot. And then it's not till sort of afterwards you take a little bit of time to reflect, you understand sort of what's happened once you come down from that adrenaline.
How are you feeling at that point?
At that point, quite a bit different to how I feel now. You go out to these places to ultimately to get into contact and to do these things, and people who aren't soldiers will listen to this and they won't understand it. But it's like being, like you say, a Premier League footballer and not getting to Premier League football, not getting into a contact or not going on tour, this sort of stuff. So at that time, ultimately, it was like bragging rights at that time, like between your peers. You go down, like I said before, the other two lads, you know, they're going, I've got 10 rounds down, I've got 50 rounds down. You go down and be like, I've got a belt change and just got a confirmed kill, you know, like ultimately between me and the other lads at the time, it was bragging right. And I remember the first comment a lad made to me when I come down off the point, because they'd all heard what had gone on by the time I'd got off the stag position, come down. And it's that banter, that dark humour that we talk about, that squaddies have all the time. And he just went to me, think about his wife and kids. And at the time, we had a little bit of a laugh, you know. And but that's what people don't understand. That is sort of how you get through these moments at a time. Years later, you know, and you start reflecting on it, and you start thinking about all of the other stuff around it. You think of, why was he fighting? Was we right to be there? You know, was he actually a Taliban fighter, or was he a local farmer who just been given $10 to come fire a burst at us and disappear so he can feed his family? This all sort of stuff comes into play. Is he able to? What's happened to his kids now? We radicalized them against us. You know, these are all them thoughts that you get later on, like as you sort of become older and wiser, and you sort of escape that mentality and that environment. So my thoughts on it now are very different to what they was at the time. Yeah.
If we took the you of today and put you back in that Sangha, would you have pulled the trigger?
100%. And like, so I can go on about all these complex questions and was it right? What was he fighting for? But at the end of the day, it don't matter. If I'm in that position, you'll act on instinct. Every single person will act on instinct. And if it's not him, it's going to be me, or it's going to be my oppo next to me, or it's going to be someone else, you know. So regardless of how I feel about it, to protect those people who ultimately around me at the time, who are brothers and you love, you do anything for them, you know. So yeah, every single time, regardless of what the outcome is on the other end for him and his family, as bad as it may sound, like, these people who I'm with are more important to me than anything. So I do it purely just for that reason.
When the Kabul evacuation happened, and obviously we all got to kind of see what the end state of Afghanistan was going to be, did that have an effect on you and cause more of these questions?
Oh yeah, massively. So what made it? I was a lot more invested because probably one of my best mates at the time, you know, he was there. He went out to do the evac. So this wasn't like when I was there. He was on WhatsApp texting us every day, you know, telling us about what's going on. But like, I remember my mental health that week. I was not in like a good place thinking about it, and this is probably like a lot of people will relate to this, you know, and probably not spoke about it. But that is when I watched that sort of unfold in sort of real time. I just remember going to work every day, and it's all like I was thinking about. And although now ultimately I don't even know whether it was right to be there in the first place or not, because the mission changed from what we actually went there to do to what it had evolved into. still, all of that sort of sacrifice and ultimately everything and what people done over years, it ultimately sort of led to absolutely we're straight back at square one. Taliban in power now. People can argue whether we was right to go there or whether we wasn't. In my time, from when I went on Herrick 7 to Herrick 12, and then we've seen later on what it become, Afghanistan had become a better place for the locals, the women, the children. It was getting infrastructure and schools. So regardless of what you think, it was starting to sort of make a little bit of a difference. Whether that was ever, feasible to carry on long term, I suppose we'll never really know, will we? But the Afghan pullout was something that, yeah, like I'll definitely, I still think about quite a lot to this day,
And what was your reason while you were out there for keeping a diary? Because you mentioned you weren't really into the camera side of things, so why the diary?
I don't know. One of the lads mentioned it, just said, yeah. And so a couple of us started them, but I think most of the lads only got like a couple weeks in, and then sort of becomes a chore, doesn't it? At the end of it, like you get off task and you think, I can't be asked writing down something now. And I look back at the writing as well now, and the wording that's in there. Clearly, I was 20-year-old at the time. It's mad some of the things I was talking about or complaining about. I remember I complained because my team commander had asked me to make him a brew in my diary. I remember that. I've just typed all my diary up now, and that is ultimately I'm trying to get that sort of released as well. So and that I've not changed nothing in it, so it's exactly as it was, and I've just like allocated all the pictures from that day to that entry in the diary and any videos into it and stuff, So that's something I'm working on to get out as soon as, and that'll be amazing to sort of read alongside the book. It'll give you that insight to how I was and how I felt at the time, rather than when the book's written, it's a perspective of years later, isn't it? But that ultimately that was my backbone of writing the book. I had that and my logbook.
Yeah, you're dead right, mate. Like it's even if you try not to, you're a different person 15 years later, or whatever, and it's funny you should mention the result. I've just been flicking through because we had the Iraq 15 years the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I got a bit nostalgic, started flicking through my diary, and I'm like, it's moaning about changing tracks, it's moaning about this. It's basically just fucking whinge fest, mate.
yeah.
So when was it that you made the decision to do the book?
So on that tour, very early on in the tour, we had someone come out and get attached with a reporter, Sean Raymond. So I don't know if you're aware of him.
I know of Sean. I don't know him, but
yeah. So he come out and he released the book Bomb Hunters, nice. And that's always sort of been in the back of my mind. And our team were on the back cover as a team on the hardback. On the front is our Ato Woody. And he only spent a little bit of time with us, so there's only one chapter sort of about us, new arrivals, because we just turned up while he was there, and he was talking about it. So was featured in that book, and then so that had always just been there, that maybe one day I can go on and sort of do it myself. And I think it become like this, almost like I don't even know what drove me to do it. I just sat down one day on a computer and I just literally started writing. I've never wrote before or anything. And then I was just doing it on and off. So I wasn't like religiously sitting there for like 6 hours, hammering out, typing. I'd come home from work and I'd, maybe spend half an hour on it. And then before long, I had this half decent thing, and then it got shelved. And it was sat there for about 6 to 9 months. And then I come back and I looked at it again. And I thought, I can actually turn this into a book. is what I thought. So then I started actually like working on refining it, sort of extending little bits, going into more detail. In the Team Stallion, that was what our team was called, WhatsApp group chat, because we still all chat every couple of days and we meet up every year. You know, I was constantly sort of asking them questions, and then they become aware of obviously what I was doing. And the plan wasn't even to release it. I went through like a little bit of a tough period where I split up with my wife, and then down the line ended up meeting a new sort of missus as such now. And we was chatting to her about it, and she's like, you need to do something. Without her, this, like, I would never have done this. She sort of pushed me massively into get this done, get it done, release it. And I still wasn't sure whether I actually even wanted to release it, if I wanted people to read about it. And I sent it to the team, and I sent it to like a couple people who I trusted, and they all sort of come back to me and was like, you need to put this out there, because all the books about sort of Afghan, they're all about snipers, special forces, you know, you've got the ATOs, the bomb disposal guys. There was nothing out there from an actual searcher. And when you think about that, it's pretty mad, because the threat in Afghan at that time was IEDs. So to not have an account by someone whose job it was to go and find IEDs, like specifically go and find them. And this is quite different the way we work, because a lot of people go, the infantry searched, and I'm like, 100%. They did spend hours and hours on Valens. The difference between how we searched and how the infantry lads search, you have the freedom to sort of go wherever you want. You can cut through fields, you can avoid places like VP's vulnerable points, whereas us, we go to where it needs clearing and there's a high potential of finding IEDs. So yeah, it was mad that hadn't ever been sort of documented before. So I put it up on my personal Facebook, and I don't have a lot of people. I'm not one of you who have 2,000 friends. I had like 300 friends or something. It got like 120 shares off my Facebook with 300 friends. So I thought clearly there's a market for it. And then I set it up, and then off the back of that, I set up the social media side of stuff, which I'd never even recorded a video in my life before, you know. So I was massively out of my comfort zone. Yeah.
And what, like, you kind of touched on it there about how important that role was in Afghanistan, but is there anything else that's like the big takeaway that you want people to kind of come away with from the book?
I think for me, search was like hidden almost. And this isn't a knock at the ATOs, the bomb disposal guys. But when you look at that task going on, the most like prolific sort of moment of what you see is him going down to defuse the device and blowing it up. And search isn't one of these sexy jobs. It's boring. You're out for hours, you're searching. And unless an incident happens, you know, like it's boring. You go out, you're searching for hours, it's slow pace, and you don't, you know, you've not got this big moment of a sniper like getting the shot and the kill. You've not got the moment of the ID operator blowing a bomb up. You've not got that moment of like special forces kicking that door in. So for it to get that and translate it across onto paper, now a lot of this book is talking about sort of my mental side and how I understood it and took it in, you know, because the mindset behind search, it was absolutely everything. But yeah, it was such, yeah, it was just mad.
So even if someone, like, aside from learning like the war stories, there's stuff in there that people can take away for mindset and that kind of stuff, side of things as well.
Yeah, massively. Yeah. And as well, the last chapter is, so like the whole book is sort of about the build up to the tour, and then sort of coming home. And then the final chapter is like me sat down reflecting on Afghanistan 15 years later as well. So there's also a bit of like that reflection of like all the questions now that I've asked myself years later. So you've got sort of these big moments, you've got the mindset stuff, and then you've got that reflection as well, almost also.
Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you, mate? I will link it up down in the notes as well. But if you want to let everyone know where they can find you, they can find the book. And then I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. Search Brimstone on Amazon. Don't get confused with a much more famous one by Kelly Hart, which was like an international bestseller. That's a romantic novel. I know one of my mates downloaded it as an ebook. You know, so
Very good.
don't make don't make that mistake. For signed copies at the moment, jump onto my social media: Facebook, Instagram, as much as I don't like it, TikTok. You know, on there, search Brimstone, Brad, anything along that should pop up. DM me. I'm building a website at the minute, but because I do everything myself, you know, it's just taking a little bit of time, and then they'll then be available on there. But once the website's live, that'll pop up onto my social media.
I've got one final question for you after this, mate. But before we get to that, I just want to kind of give you the floor. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah. So recently, I've had a couple of the lads from within the search and have done other tours, later tours, earlier tours where the threat wasn't as high, and they're all like, when they read my account, they think that they've not done a lot, or they've not, maybe they've not been as busy on tour or task as some of the other teams that in them peak IED years. And I think what we do as soldiers, we compare our service to everyone else's. But like if a lad has gone out on one search task and got a Valin and walked down a route to look for IEDs, that in itself, getting across that mental barrier and being able to do that, whether you've done it once or 100 times, whether you found no IEDs, whether you found 20 IEDs, you know, that is like, don't discredit your service. That's something I found. And recently I went to an REA, which is the Royal Engineers Association dinner, and I did a talk, and I had some of these old boys who've been in Bosnia, Kosovo, Northern Ireland, and they all kept coming up to me and saying the same thing, going, "Oh, yeah, we did this, but it was nothing compared to you." And I think people need to stop comparing their service to other people's. There's always someone who's done more. There's always someone who's done less. If you've done that job and that role, then you pat yourself on the back, because like, you've got to be fucking mentally hard to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely brilliant point. Brad, thanks so much for your time today, mate. Really appreciate having you on. It's been a pleasure. Hope everyone goes to pick up the book. And one final question for you, mate. Would you do it all again?
Yeah, like, how many people have you had on this podcast who said no to that? Have you had many?
I think we've had a couple of
Yeah.
it's pretty much
I think,
a yes, mate.
Yeah, I think unless people have had one of these really horrendous tours, most people, and especially this question more so than ever, is quite big, because over the past couple of days, I put a couple of clips up and I had some big comments off people. I put a post up about saying, why is it we'd all go back to sort of Afghan in a heartbeat? Well, 90% of us and 90% of the comments are like, yep. And the reason is, I think, is it gives you, it returns you to like that primal state before, you know, all of this existed, technology and everything. It gives you the two main things you need. It gives you a purpose, whether you agree with it or not at the time. It gives you a purpose and a common goal, and the tribe and the lads amongst you and that brotherhood. And a couple of people have commented saying, yeah, but you can get that brotherhood through doing like base jumping or doing an extreme sport together. And I'm like, no, you can get a brotherhood, but it's not the same as, you know, depending on someone for your life day in, day out, you know. So just to get that feeling again, 100% I'd do it again, regardless of what the outcome was. And this isn't for me to glorify war or say I had an amazing time on war, but that feeling of having them people around you, you know, is unmatched, I find.